Time now for The Clash, as you've just heard in my digest. As far as I'm concerned, COP26 has been one long, pointless example of environmentalist theatre, with the political and media elite telling us how to change our lives while they continue to commute to work on private jets. But what do you think? Is COP26 an orgy of hypocrisy? You're now able to vote on that question on Twitter @GB News. I'll bring you the results and some of your emails from dan@gbnews.uk in just a moment. But first, let's welcome tonight's Clash opponents, the infamous Liam Norton of Insulate Britain and net zero skeptic Philip Davies MP. It is great to have both of you here. Liam Norton, all of you environmentalists are proving yourselves over the course of this conference to be absolute hypocrites, aren't you? We've got folk like you campaigning for homes to be insulated when you don't insulate your own homes. And now you've got all of the world's leaders flying into this conference on private jets.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right, Dan. COP26 is one of the biggest examples of criminality that's going on in the world right now. They're in the process of killing our kids. COP's killing our kids' futures. COP's at the moment is facilitating the destruction of young people all around the world.
Philip Davies, how do you respond?
Well, I think Liam's just highlighting what a set of fanatics these people are. I mean, whatever the world does, whatever they do on climate change, it will never, ever be enough. Even if we were to get down to the 1.5 degrees target, I'm sure Liam would say that's not enough. If we were to get down to 1 degree, that wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough for these fanatics. You know, it's worse than that, though. You know, this is going to almost bankrupt the country. It's going to cost my constituents and people up and down the country untold amounts of money on a completely futile gesture, because, look, the fact of the matter is, I'm sorry to disappoint anybody who's relying on the fact that all the world is going to come together to miraculously change the world's climate. It's not going to happen. It is just not going to happen. All of this money getting to net zero will be wasted because it won't make a blind bit of difference to global temperatures, because China, India, emerging economies in Africa are going to still churn out more and more carbon emissions because they want to get their people out of poverty, and why shouldn't they? And so what I would say to Liam is, if you really do worry about the impact of climate change on places around the world, rather than wasting time on a futile attempt to get to net zero, which won't make a blind bit of difference, let's spend some money on trying to help those countries that may be impacted on mitigate, on adapting to the changes in the world's climate. At least that money would be well spent. At least it would actually achieve something. Trying to get to net zero and spending trillions in the process will achieve absolutely nothing apart from inflict pain and misery on people up and down the country.
And Liam, don't you understand that? Do you not understand that ordinary Brits are very well aware that we've done more than any other major Western democracy, and that folk like you are actually trying to bankrupt the country?
Well, I'd like to ask Philip, does he understand that ordinary Brits, 3.2 million of them, are living in fuel poverty? Does he know that tens of thousands of elderly are freezing to death in their homes each year? You know, and please don't. No, hang on a minute, Dan. Hang on. Allow me to finish the sentence, because this is important.
Facts on this show.
Yeah, facts. Go to the government website.
Thousands of elderly are
dying in their homes. Go to the government website. It's the government's own figures, Dan. They're the government's own figures on fuel poverty. They were released earlier on. 3.2 million people are in fuel poverty, and tens of thousands of them are freezing to death in their homes. That's what's going on. And the plans that Insulate Britain.
Thousands of people are not freezing to their deaths in homes.
Look at the statistics, Dan. They're on the government website, my friend. Look at the stats, okay? They're on the government website.
Liam,
and look, this country is being destroyed by the utter stupidity of the political class that haven't got a clue about what it is that they're talking about, and they haven't got the guts to stand up to private interests. This person is funded by the fuel lobbies and the Global Warming Policy Foundation and Tufton Street, all kinds of
Sorry, are you making
societies.
Are you making that claim about Philip Davies?
I've seen the freedom associations, all these
Okay, well, you've just made quite a serious claim.
All
there.
these kinds of
You've just made quite a serious claim,
societies.
so I'm going to give Philip Davies a chance to respond. Philip Davies, have you been bought off by the fuel lobby, as Liam suggests?
I've never been funded by the fuel lobby, by the Global Warming Foundation, by anyone in Tufton Street, by the Freedom Association. I've never been bought off or paid by any of those people, so that's just a blatant smear and lie. The point is, Liam, getting back to the actual facts of the matter rather than the sort of lies and smears, the facts of the matter is, if you're concerned about fuel poverty in the UK, we all are concerned about fuel poverty in the UK. I am. The cost of living is a massive issue in this country. It seems absolutely senseless to me to think that the solution to fuel poverty and the cost of living is to pursue policies that will just put up the price of people's energy and put up the price of people's fuel. If you're concerned about fuel poverty, then what you should be arguing for is that the government should be seeking to get the cheapest energy for constituents so that they can pay their fuel bills and live there. What you're seeking
you haven't investigated anything that we've been talking about.
You are seeking to put up the cost of energy.
No, we're talking about using less energy, Philip. Less energy. We need to bring energy use down to zero. That's what we're talking about. And look, have you got any idea of the science of what it is climate change means? Do you understand what the carbon lag is?
Liam, this is...
Do you understand what the Blue Ocean event is? Philip, Philip, do you understand what the Blue Ocean event is? Do you understand what the Blue Ocean event is?
Liam, I'm conducting this interview. This is what you like to do.
Do you understand how much ice has been lost?
Questions, Liam.
Do you understand how much ice has been lost?
Liam, stop. I am conducting this interview.
You're arguing with the wrong person here.
Do you understand what the Blue Ocean event is,
Are you going to let me answer or not?
Do you understand?
Yeah. You're arguing with the wrong person.
No, but if you answer that question, do you understand anything about the scientific consequences of what 2 degrees means? It means 1 billion people.
Liam, stop.
1 billion people on the move.
Do
you understand what that means?
Philip Davies
it means the destruction of our economy.
You can keep talking.
It means the loss of your pensions,
because I am conducting this interview.
Right.
So Liam,
your pension will be destroyed.
Can we cut Liam's mic, please? And I'm going to ask the question. Because, Liam, this is my show, mate. I ask the questions here, okay? Your mic is cut because you're going to be polite and you're not going to act like a petulant schoolchild for once, and you're going to let me ask the question and you can respond. Philip has made a point in his letter that actually it doesn't matter how much we do in this country, because until countries like China, India, and emerging economies in Africa actually play their part, even if we reduce our carbon emissions to 0% of global emissions, it will make no difference at all to global temperatures. Liam, now you can respond like a good boy.
Look, I'm asking Philip a basic question about climate science.
I won't let him answer.
No, and well, you haven't answered the question.
That's because I can't get a word in edgeways.
Well, do you understand what the consequences of 2 degrees?
Liam, you don't seem to understand.
No, I'm going to ask the question.
Answer them, mate.
2 degrees C. 2 degrees C. 2 degrees C means 1 billion people on the move. What does 1 billion people on the move mean? 1,000 million people on the move. It means war. It means slaughter. It means the rape of women. It means the unimaginable suffering.
Liam,
and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, Dan. Okay, and this has consequences for every single person in the United Kingdom. It means the loss of pensions.
Liam,
it means the destruction of our economy.
Can we cut Liam's mic now because he's had a chance to respond, and I'm going to ask the next question. Liam,
because he's completely misinformed about the consequences of this country is facing in terms of the climate crisis.
The debate is that you actually have to listen to both sides. Philip, the point that you were making is that yes, there could be consequences, but it's nothing to do with UK carbon emissions, which are already down to less than 1% of global emissions, right? So surely campaigners like Liam should be focusing their attention on China and India and these emerging African nations.
To be perfectly frank, Liam's making my point for me, because if people can't see what lunatics these people are, then, you know, they're doing a far better job than...
I'm furious that the political class... I'm furious that the political class laugh at the absolute destruction that this country faces and the consequences that this country faces, and the inability of our political class, or the guts, or the cowardice that it displays,
Liam,
by refusing to face up to the consequences.
Do you concede that, as Philip points out in this letter that has gone viral to a constituent, do you concede that the UK has cut its carbon emissions by almost half over the past 30 years?
Well, I mean, there's loads of things that you need to take into account. What about all the crap that we buy from China? What about all the stuff that we buy from China? What about that? But look, it's about having some honour and some integrity. We led the world into the Industrial Revolution, and now we've got a responsibility to lead the way out. And what Philip ignores is he has this nihilistic attitude that citizens all around the world are going to like refuse to accept what their governments are doing. This is going on all around the world. I accept what Philip's saying, but what he refuses to accept is that citizens all over the world are going to refuse to accept the destruction of their young people, and people all over the world are going to rise up to
that actually the actions of an organisation like Insulate Britain are actually turning off your constituents. It's actually hardening them.
The actions of Insulate Britain are going to happen.
That was to Philip. That was to Philip. I don't know if you heard Liam.
Sorry, Liam.
I think the point is that Liam and Insulate Britain do these ridiculous tactics, which are counterproductive to Liam's cause. I mean, thinking that you know, sticking yourself on the road and disrupting everybody's lives is going to improve your campaign is mind-boggling to me. But the point is, the reason why they do it is because they know they haven't got public support for their views. That's why they do it. If they had public support for their views, they'd be able to win the argument through the ballot box, which is in a democracy.
I mean, Liam, you look at this, Liam, you look at this footage now, Liam, you must accept that you have turned off the vast majority of the British public who now despise your organisation, who think you're a bunch of eco-terrorist lunatics.
Well, a poll by ESG for consumers found that 71% of the UK public thought climate change was their biggest concern.
No, I'm talking about Insulate Britain.
Well, I'm talking about the effects of climate change.
Don't care what you're talking about. You're here to answer my question.
The British public are concerned about their children. That's what they're concerned about. And people like Philip are in the complete minority in terms of what the British public are actually interested in.
And I've got no elections have you won?
I've got no idea where he gets his basis from that the UK public are just going to accept the destruction of their children. That's not going to happen. And people are going to start seeing more and more. Insulate Britain and organisations like it are going to spring up all over the world because people are refusing to accept that governments just get away with this blatant criminality.
You're not doing yourself a good service. You're doing yourself a disservice, I would argue. A couple of final questions to you, Liam. Have you insulated your own home appropriately yet?
I don't own a home, Dan. If you bothered to do any journalism,
where you're living?
You'd know that I don't own any homes. I never have done.
Well, we know that the home where you were living was not properly insulated.
You don't know anything. You get educated by The Sun, by journalists in The Sun who are also selling out everybody in this country with their misinformation. They should be telling the British public about what the Chatham House report is saying, that if...
No, I'm not asking you about that. I'm just asking you if you've insulated where you live.
You don't want to tell your viewers about the reality of the situation.
Yes, I do. No, but I'm just asking you if you've insulated your own home.
You're giving them misinformation about the reality of the situation.
So you're not prepared to answer that question?
Well, I'm here to say to the people watching this that if you want to know what the weather is doing, look out of the window, okay? Don't believe the lies and the misinformation that cowards like some of our MPs and people in the media are telling you. Understand that this crisis is real, and the only way that we're going to get out of it is if we go into civil resistance against this government, which means sitting on the motorways. And if you're tired of austerity, come and sit on the motorways. If you're tired that they can't fill the shelves up, come and sit on the motorways.
You need to grow up.
If you're tired that they're
real
pumping
job,
shit into
insulate your
rivers.
own home,
Come and sit on
then
the
maybe the
motorways.
British people
The
will
only
start
place to
taking you
be,
seriously.
if you care about
because
this country,
right now
is
they're
to
not
come and
taking you
sit on the
seriously.
motorways of the United Kingdom. That's the only place for a true Democrat to be at the moment, is on the motorways with Insulate Britain. That's what I've come on here to say.
Election, Liam.
Because that's full of crooks like you. It's full of crooks like you. I'm here to tell the British public that the only place to be, if you care about your family, is to come and sit on the motorways of this country and go into resistance.
At least you didn't walk out this time, Liam.
Criminality that is going on everywhere, up and down this land.
But I think you're going to need to improve your interview technique a little bit. That was Insulate Britain spokesman Liam Norton and Conservative MP for Shipley, Philip Davies. Thank you both. So who do you agree with? Feedback from you now. David on Twitter says, COP26 was a huge all-expenses-paid jolly for thousands of already overpaid government officials. Joss on Twitter says, political leaders are hypocrites in defence of the royals. They